o'clock on the computer here. I'd like to get started. I'd like to call the October 20th Lake Ripley Management District Board of Directors meeting to order. Roll call, all board members present. Okay, public comment. Is there anything, any public comment for anything not on their agenda today? Seeing none, we will move on to approving the minutes of the September 15th, 2018 meeting, which you all should have in front of you.
I'd make a motion to approve.
Okay, Keith made a motion to approve the minutes from the last September 15th meeting. Was there a second?
Oh, wait a minute. I'm not going to second because I wasn't here, but they look good.
Yeah,
I can second.
George, you want a second? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Nays? Motion passes. Thank you. Treasurer's report. Mike.
Thank you, Mr. President. This being the October meeting, the financial statements that you have in front of you are for the excuse me, third quarter 2018. I received those yesterday about 11:30 in the morning, so there are a few things I want to point out as we go through it, but basically the numbers are correct.
That wasn't sent out to us, was it?
I'm sorry, what?
I didn't get it.
I should have sent it yesterday.
I
got an email.
Oh. I'll take a look.
I'll wait till you-
I got it at 11:32.
Yeah, came in at about 11.
Yeah, I
my
sent it
time.
right after I got it.
We'll wait until
Do we
Craig,
have any hard copies?
You can get my hard copy here in a sec.
We should probably always have a few extra hard copies around.
Pardon?
We should always have some hard copies probably available. This one here? Oh, both?
Yep, both of them.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I didn't get
Okay,
it.
so the September 30th, end of the third quarter, our cash position remains strong at $130,445. We have no liabilities. The restricted funds changed just a slight amount. I'll point that out in a minute. Our fund balance coming into the year 2018 at $58,239 remains the same. And what our bookkeeper calls net income, which is really the excess of receipts over disbursements for a not-for-profit, is $53,000. I anticipate a significant carry forward from 2018 to 2019 because we've completed our harvesting for the year. We have but one payroll left for one of our harvester guys. He hasn't reported in yet, but I'll point that out as we get to it. On page 2 is the statement of revenue and expenses. One of the things I want to point out to you is that she has an incorrect header up there. She writes that she has April through June 2018. Obviously, it's July through September. The numbers in the columns are correct, but the header up there is incorrect. So I pointed that out to her, and rather than reprint the statements and resend them, we just went along with what we have. During the third quarter, our revenue for property taxes was $35,000. That concludes the levy. We've received now 100% of our levy. A little bit of interest income. Our donations of $16,000 was the large one that we were waiting for. The Ducks Unlimited finally came through. Thank you, Andrew, for your push.
That's right.
15,000 from Ducks Unlimited and $1,000 from the Jacobson Brown Foundation. We did incur some grant expenses, about roughly $1,400. That was all payroll. It was all payroll for Richard Traylor, who we have down at the public boat launch for the Clean Boats, Clean Water grant that we received from the DNR this year. Andrew now has to, I'm assuming you have to file a settlement statement with the state of the DNR.
Yep, we have to put together a report and a statement of.
We want to make sure our
expenses and
expenses exceed the grant amount, or
Yep.
at least equal the grant amount. July through September, we We paid our insurance on the general liability and the marine and truck. We did get a refund on the workman's comp. Remember, workman's comp is based on salaries. The premium is set based on an estimate of the compensation that was paid in the current year, and then if we don't reach that level, which this year we didn't, they give us a refund, and that $331 is a refund. So our net workman's comp for the year was $731, well below our budget. So again, I'm anticipating a large carryover to next year. Weed harvesting, we incurred $2,709. There is one operator wages that we have not paid since we haven't gotten his timesheet. It'll be roughly $2,000. So for the year, January through September, our total weed harvesting expenses should be somewhere around $5,500 in the ballpark. Operations for the quarter totaled $17,683. There was no significant items in there, just the normal operating expenses. So we're running roughly about roughly $20,000 a quarter. You know, $18,000 to $20,000 a quarter in operating expenses. The next page, we've got our capital reserve and land acquisition. We've got our special programs, which now includes the monitoring of the stream monitoring expenses. The bulk of that $1,789 is really the testing that we send our samples to Wisconsin, Madison, correct, Andrew?
Yeah, Wisconsin State Lab of Hygiene.
Yep. Wisconsin State Lab of Hygiene, and the bulk of that, roughly $1,200–1,300, is that. Preserve restoration development, these are just normal costs associated with the preserve, mowing and that type of thing. And that I&E, information and education, $1,500 is our third quarter ripples. The bulk of it is the ripples. If you flip over to the next page, it's the actual budget remaining. As you can see at the top, we budgeted $122,916. That was our tax levy, and we received the entire $122,916. That $1,381 is our grant. That answers the comment I made earlier. Our revenue was $1,381 for clean boats, clean water, and where our grant expenses were $1,396. So, good job, Andrew. You made sure all the expenses exceeded the revenue. Interest income, a little for 3 quarters, was $441. There's our donations of $16,000. So as you go through this report, I just want to point out, as we get down to weed harvesting, about 3/4 down that page, account number 564, operator wages. That's where we budgeted $6,000 in wages for the year, and we only had $1,764 actual, but we do have another $2,000. So at the end of the day, or maybe at the end of the year season, instead of having an under budget of $4,236, we should have an under budget of roughly $2,236. When you look at weed harvesting and in total, we budgeted $10,000, and we're only going to incur roughly $5,500. So we're going to have a significant carry forward in weed harvesting. We're going to have a slight carryover in insurance, and the big one is going to be our cost share. If you go up a little bit to a page, account number 415 and 419, we budgeted $10,000 for each of them, which would be cost share for current year projects and cost share for prior year projects. We did not incur any expenses.
Right.
Now I understand there is a project.
Well,
that
we have several inquiries coming through now, so although that probably won't affect this year's budget, but we'll probably need that carryover next year.
Okay. Yeah. Because next year, if I recall, we budgeted $5,000 for each of the cost share and the prior prior year cost share. So I've gone through insurance and weed harvesting operations. We're going to be on account 610, staff wages. We're going to be short there. We're going to be over budget. And the reason we're going to be over budget is because when Lisa left the district, we paid her sick days, which amounted to about $4,700. So as we put this compensation committee together, I think one of the things we ought to do is look at that sick pay, sick days carryover. Because when it was established, and we can go into greater detail when the committee's formed, but when it was established, John was instrumental in convincing us that we should follow the county. The county is a lot more conservative, liberal than we are, I think. And the sick days that were...
And we can talk about that when the committee convenes, but I think, to your point, to have it so we can have a budget, so we can somehow budget it, versus just having, upon someone exiting, all of a sudden we have this large bill to figure out. So I think your biggest thing is to say, how do we budget it?
We need to
if we
address
budget
it.
it.
The budget or readjust it.
Right. I think that to me it has to be readdressed in the meeting or compensation team.
Let's see. We finally got an invoice from our outside accounting firm. If you go to the following page, account number 665, outside accounting. We budgeted $600 for the year. We didn't receive the bill in September. We received it in October, and it was roughly $450. So it took a long time to get that final invoice, but we finally got it from the bookkeeper. Everything else appears to be, another big item is our legal fees. We thought legal fees would be extremely high this year. We budgeted $5,000. We only incurred $150 so far. So we're going to have significant carryover there. Special programs, that account number 953, special programs. We budgeted $1,000. Now keep in mind that budget was prepared in August of 17. For 18. We didn't budget for the stream monitoring, which causes us to go well over. We've incurred expenses of $2,200, so we're over budget already, about $1,200 at the end of September, and there may be some additional costs in October for that stream monitoring.
We decided to take that monies from that account when we agreed to pay for the monitoring equipment. Right? That's what you said.
No, the equipment itself didn't come from there. It came from capital reserve and land acquisition. It's up in that account 952.
Okay.
We budgeted $15,000 for capital reserve, asset acquisition, if you will, and land acquisition of $15,000. We incurred a total of $9,500, and that's where that.
Okay. What came out of the account 953? Do we know what we pulled out?
Oh yeah, we know. We've got detail on exactly what it is.
Okay. Stream monitoring stuff.
Most of it was stream monitoring, but there might have been other items. Let me see if that happened. I don't recall if that happened in the third quarter. Okay. I can get you the detail on that later in the meeting. I'll report back to you on that.
Was that
the following pages? You've got your general ledger. If you recall, a general ledger is by account number, all the detail that goes through that account. The first account is account 101, petty cash, but 102 lists all the checks that were written and the account number that they were charged to. When you see a check that says split, for example, the first one was a payroll check. When you see it says split, that means that the charges went to different accounts. Some would be, in this case, it was payroll, so it would be payroll expense. It would be payroll taxes, pension, that type of thing. And this goes on and on all the way through. One account I want to point out to you is on page, the next page, way down at the bottom. Account 280, restricted funds. This flip side copy is sort of confusing to everybody. But not everybody, so. You see there? There were some charges. Under restricted funds, we charged $300 to that account because we had to have an appraisal of, or an appraisal review of our survey. Was it the survey? No, not the survey.
We had an appraisal, then we had to have an appraisal review.
Of the appraisal.
Yeah.
In order for DNR and Ducks Unlimited to release that money.
Yeah.
Offsetting that, we sold our truck for $100, the Green Monster, and that $100 goes back into restricted funds. I mentioned we received our total tax levy. If you go into the next page, account 420, grant expenses, you can see those were the payrolls that were paid to Richard Traylor. That was the clean boats and clean water, total $1,396. That's the only items of significance. I'll point something out so everybody's clear on this. If you go down to page 5, account 691, board stipend, you notice that my stipend is larger than anyone else's. That's because normally Jimmy's stipend and my stipend would be identical. We each get $100 a month for serving as the treasurer and the president of the board, and $50 a meeting. But Jimmy gets reimbursed from the town, so we don't reimburse him the $50 because he gets it from the town. Correct me if I'm wrong.
You are correct.
Okay, so Jimmy's stipend is $100 a meeting. Mine is $100 a month. My stipend is $100 a month plus $50 a meeting. Everyone else is $50 a meeting. So that's why my number sort of looks much larger than everyone else's. I point that out only because...
Well, my reimbursement comes from the township.
Right. I point that out only because I'm writing the checks and I want everybody to know that, that's the reason. It's higher.
We trust you.
Thank you. The only other comment I want to make is over on account 699. That's on the last page. It's page 6 of the report. That there says deposit on August 1st, and she's got PP truck, but really that should be PP tax. It's the $11.16 we got back from the state of Wisconsin for personal property tax. She misread it and she wrote truck, so it's really tax.
Okay.
And if, I keep saying final comment, but if you go down a little bit further to account 952, capital reserve and land acquisition. In the third quarter, we bought the international truck for $1,600. We had to register the truck, those title fees of $74. And then we bought the 10 horsepower motor, outboard motor from Quams for roughly $2,500. Those are the items that went through that capital reserve and land acquisition. Prior to that time, during the first 6 months of the year, to answer your question earlier, Jimmy, we bought that lake monitoring equipment.
Okay.
So that would have gone in there. And unless there are any questions, that sort of concludes my report.
Okay, thank you for the great job of catching a couple errors there, and the explanation is great as always, Mike. Any questions of the treasurer's report? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to accept the report as read.
I'll make that motion.
Georgia, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, is there a second? All in favor of accepting Mike's report as read, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Nays? Thanks again, Mike. Lake manager report and correspondence. Andrew.
All right. So we'll start out with stream monitor. Usually talk a bunch about this. That's pretty much starting to wind down. We typically do most of the stream monitoring like we do most of the lake monitoring, and that's in the summer months. I'm also pretty interested in what's happening in the spring when we have a lot of runoff when the fields are bare. But for the most part, stream monitoring is kind of wrapped up. As far as like our phosphorus samples, we'll be doing that about once a month from now on till next spring. unless we have like some big rainfall event or something like that where we want to see how much runoff is coming off the landscape. One thing that I did do is, I think it was about 2 weeks ago, we had a fairly good rain, and I wanted to see, so the creek had flooded the wetland between County A and Ripley Road, and I wanted to see how much water was actually flowing in through the wetland and not just the creek channel. And so I did some calculations. I measured the flow at the culvert there on County A, and then I went over down to the wetland and then measured just the flow through the stream channel versus the entire width of the creek, which is actually now the entire is in the wetland, because you can't really measure the flow through the wetland very accurately directly. So anyway, so the wetland's the creek's like 80 feet, 100 feet wide now. So I measured that stream channel, which is about 8-10 feet wide, and it turns out that 30% of the water flowing through that whole system is actually going through the wetland, and so it's having a chance to get filtered and everything that way. So that was an interesting little tidbit to see how much stuff is moving through the stream. So stream monitoring is sort of it's winding down. It will continue on through next year, but it's winding down. Lake planning, I'm going to get a little bit more into that a little bit later. Lake water quality monitoring, so I think I've gone out once just to do some monitoring when I was out on the lake taking a Secchi disc. I know Keith, are you still going out at all? Yep, so Keith is still going out. We did some
I'm done now, my boat's gone. So no more.
And we did some with the pontoon classroom. The other thing we did was we got a call from a couple people about some debris that got stuck in the outlet creek there. So the main thing that got stuck in there was a couple of branches. So there's some smallish branches got stuck in there. You can kind of see them moving here through a, I don't know if that shows up, no it doesn't. But anyway, at a 45-degree angle going across there. And so this is at a time of year when all the wetland or the lake plants and stuff, they die back and they naturally float up and cause problems for people. And then they're also kind of wedged in every little nook and cranny in the creek rocks, and then also in the branch, kind of causing more of a dam issue, and then also deflecting all the water over there. You can see on the left hand side of the bank there. So it's starting to cause some erosion and whatnot. And so I asked the DNR if it's okay if we can go out there and remove the branches and whatnot. And they said, yes, we could, and that we should actually do it as soon as possible. So I took the boat out and cleared it up. And then, so this is afterwards. So just real quick, before, after, I removed those branches, freed up some of those aquatic plants, and then I can see the stream is moving, through the center of channel. There's, so there's less erosion going around on the bank. So those branches in there totally seem to be like they were there naturally. It just floated in, along with the plants and whatever. One other thing that was interesting that I think just floated in there naturally too, but isn't a natural, and this is a Christmas tree. Had probably been in the lake for several years, and someone had tied a brick to it. So somebody had taken it upon themselves to create a little bit of a fish habitat or a fish magnet by sinking their Christmas tree or somebody else's Christmas tree into the lake. And so then they know where that is, and then they can go fish at that spot, and bass and panfish and stuff will be attracted to that. So that was just kind of interesting to see that, but not surprising that someone had done that. So we got all that stuff removed, and then I took the garbage out of the lake, and we threw it in the brush pile here at the township to dispose of it. So it's nice to be able to have the our new boat to be able to go out there and take care of it right away. There was also an inflatable raft that was stuck in there.
In a chair.
In a chair. Somebody had gotten the chair out though by the time I got
Where's
out.
this at now?
This is at the outlet creek.
Outlet creek.
Oh, at the outlet. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So the pictures that I took here, I'm basically standing in the lake, so it's
okay.
right at the edge of the.
We got a couple calls from residents that talked about chairs and stuff being stuck in there, and that's kind of what triggered this. And I did see the chair in there, but by the time Andrew got there, someone evidently came and got the chair. It was a plastic, lawn chair thing.
When
Who knows? Yeah. So and then all that debris was stuck in there. So I asked Andrew, let's call the DNR and see what they say about us being able to keep that clean. And we actually got it in writing that, yeah, you guys should make it clean, so
Yeah.
that was
yeah.
nice.
So that always adds to the confusion to that, and that's another agenda item that we'll put on there. I've done some research into alternatives into the dam. That's kind of part of the ongoing lake planning process. Let's see. So I won't get into too much detail, but it does take a while to to do the research both online through traditional paper literature and stuff like that to see what alternatives we might have other than just putting a concrete dam there or doing nothing, like what it's pretty much is what's happened for the last 100 years or so. Back here. So we cleaned up the harvester. So the harvester got pulled up out. I had one of our harvester employees. He power washed the harvester for about a day. Got it very clean, and then the town of Oakland has put it away for storage along with our dump truck and our conveyor belt for the winter. So that's all done. One of the other things that housekeeping businesses, as far as weed harvesting program is concerned, is we got our gate widened. So if you look at it, it's almost about a third again as wide as it was. So you can see there's half of the old gate is on there. So it was, if you look at the new gate, the nice shiny section, it's about half again then as wide. So it's nice and wide, so it should be a lot easier to drive in and out of there for our weed harvesting program.
Andrew, that opens out towards the road or in towards the...
Out towards the road.
Out towards the road.
Towards the ramp.
Yeah, it looks like it would.
Yeah, that's good. It's definitely needed.
Okay. So I've been working on the whole lake process, which includes doing some research into the grant writing, what grants are going to be available. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. So when I'm out in the preserve looking for or looking at the water quality of the creek and stuff like that, I stop and collect seeds, and I'm getting kind of a good collection of various things for the prairie and the wetland, because we're starting to talk about doing some restoration in the wetland, which is going to involve removing dirt and then having to replant. So it'll be nice to be able to replant with some of the things that naturally occur over at the preserve. So I've been collecting all kinds of seeds, and it doesn't look like much, but it's probably $500 worth of seeds sitting on my desk. So it's worth the extra 15 or 20 minutes I spend out there each time that I'm doing that.
Yeah, it's neat to see the different seeds that are here, and we're able to collect them. That's kind of cool that we're identifying that. So, yeah, thanks for doing that.
Yeah, no problem. Let's see, the transmission lines on the truck leaked real bad. I was kind of surprised I was able to drive back from Menards.
This is a pickup truck?
This is the pickup truck, yeah. So that got all repaired. So we're back in business there.
Who actually repaired that, do you know?
That was Ed's guy, Leroy from Lake Mills.
Okay.
I forget the name of that company, but do you
I don't recall.
Oh, okay.
I can tell you real quick.
Well, I mean, I was just if you knew off the top of your head. And then one of the other things that I've done is set up a meeting live stream. And so what that is it'll give, and we're doing it right now actually as kind of a test. So just back out of here. So on YouTube, we'll see if it's working. So, all right. So we have a live stream, and so what's going on is it seems to like we've got a hiccup. But anyway, so that's why we're running a test today, is to see what happens. And so through YouTube, we can run a live stream of basically what my computer sees, and then what we've got for the audio here. And apparently it's offline. Again, that's why we test these things. And so you'll be able to basically you'll be seeing a slideshow, and then you'll be able to hear the audio as it happens, and then also after it's over, it automatically gets recorded and put up on YouTube as a video. So if you guys are out of town, if you're out sick or whatever, and you can't make a meeting, You can either watch it as it's happening, or you can also, let's see if it's working this way. Yeah, so this is the software that I'm using. It's basically just capturing that live screen of what's happening on the computer. So anyway, you can watch it either as it happens, or you can watch it later on, or anybody who, isn't up here all year round and wants to see what's going on with the meeting, you'll be able to do that. Provided we can work out some bugs if any occur. And right now it might have an issue with the strength of our Wi-Fi signal, so we might have to get a cable to plug it in. But anyway, it's really easy to set up, and in that. So it should be able to allow for a little bit better interaction with the public, or at least the public can see what we're doing better. So when the cable guy isn't here to record it, we'll have a recording of it, and it'll be basically archived then on YouTube, and you don't need a special login to do it or anything like that. You can just go onto our YouTube page, and it'll say that we're streaming live, or it'll show up the past meetings and stuff like that, and you can click on it and listen to it.
What? You had a question?
Andrew, will this work only if it's coordinated with the cable company?
No, this is independent of it.
Independent of the cable company?
Right, yeah.
Okay.
So the cable company is, would still be coming in here, still be doing their video of it, which
They're not here today.
well, they're not here today, but so there'll be a better version of it, basically, but we'll be doing it independently, so we'll have it for our records, and then whoever else
Okay,
wants
but the
it.
video portion will only be what's on the screen, which is
Right.
what you're going to also simultaneously put it up there.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the discussion will be on there, because I can see my voice being recorded, right?
Yeah. So we got a microphone here, so the discussion
the visual may not be of every.
Yeah, the
meeting,
visual
but
won't be
meeting
of the
will
room. It'll just be of
Video.
whatever shows up on the screen.
Yeah, that's
Correct.
pretty neat.
So.
That is neat.
So because people can't make it here all the time, but they still want to know what's going on. You don't get all the details and the stuff out of the minutes, and then the minutes don't come out, on Monday or whatever, so that usually don't have it for a couple of weeks. So it'll just be more informative for people. Probably not a lot of people are going to take advantage of it, but it'll be there for those who do want it.
I just said that so my voice would get on there.
Yeah, you can watch it little.
Well, that brings
audio
up an
there.
interesting point. Should we be identifying ourselves before we speak?
That's a good point.
I mean, I may make a comment, Jimmy may override it, Walt may say something, it's one of those things that, should we identify ourselves, or is that not necessary?
That could get pretty clumsy.
It could get very
Yeah,
clumsy.
that's-
I don't think so.
The handsome Mike Sabella.
Standing tall and looking good,
Yeah.
that's me.
It's a tool to help reach out to folks who can't be here.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not being here, obviously.
But it's a
tool.
one-way, it's not a
One
two-way.
way, correct.
Right. There is a way where people can comment, but I'll disable that because people could get in an argument back and forth while we're doing that, drop F-bombs and stuff like that, and we would have no idea, but it was happening on a live thing. So we will disable comments for that. But, the only thing I'm not sure of is if the audio is going to pick up people from the audience. So if anybody over there has a question, I'm not sure we'll get it, but I mean, we can also briefly summarize the question, repeat the question and then answer it, which is always kind of a good idea anyway. So we'll see how that goes.
When at the beginning of the meeting, would it help to say, like he says, all the board members are present, list the board members' names at the beginning of who's here? Not saying,
Yeah.
then at least you'd know who was in attendance.
Right.
When you heard a voice.
Do like a roll call, I mean?
Yeah.
Roll call rather.
Yeah, that might be helpful. All right. Back to my presentation.
No, that's it.
All right. Okay. So yeah, we're going to continue streaming lake monitoring. So we're at the short and midterm plans of my report. Long-term plans, these are basically continuing things. We're updating the lake management plan. We've got preserve management plan needs to be on the radar as well. For correspondence and meetings, we had a cost share meeting at Shore Place with Jimmy and I, and also Jay Setterson and Tom Harvey from Shore Place, and we looked at that project.
John too.
Oh yeah,
John
Molinaro, yep. I'm sorry about that. So we looked at that project and scored it. Did I have a note? But anyway, we scored it high enough where it would be an eligible project. And so if Tom has to bring his quotes and stuff back to that neighborhood association to decide if they want to go ahead and with the project and approve the money to do so. Once he does that and does get approval, then it'll come to the board for approval of that cost share project. So that's where that is right now. We have, and since they don't have a meeting till next year, they have to mail out something to all their members and then get a response that way. So it's not something that's probably going to happen real quick.
We wanted a firm commitment from the Shore Place group before we brought it to the board to approve the money, and then have that money earmarked for them. I says, get it approved by your group and then bring it to the board, and then we can earmark that money. So, because I think we have about 3 inquiries right now for the budget, and that'll, obviously we don't have enough money in the budget to cover all 3 projects. So I wanted to make sure that they were committing.
How many feet does Short Place have?
It was 60. How
It was
many?
90.
90 feet.
About 90 feet?
Yeah.
So I know when we did Cedar Shores, which is 420 feet, that was about $32,000.
It's going to be a fair amount of money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do 90 feet, yeah.
That's been 14 years ago, really now. So I just happened to look, when we started the discussion, I went back and looked at the cost. The total cost was just under $32,000. Of course, that was cost sharing and.
Yeah, and I don't know if that group's going to agree to spend that money. So that's why I said, let's find out for sure you guys agree to spend that money.
Yep. And then we did the pontoon classroom. I think that was about October 5th or so. We went out on Keith's pontoon boat. So thanks, Keith. Georgia was there as well. And then we had about 7 students. Was it 6 or 7? That came out there. So that was the Cambridge High School advanced placement biology students came out. We were there with Paul Garrison. And Paul did a core sample of the lake sediment, and so we looked at that, and he explained really well, how you go through the history and look at the sedimentation rates, and that indicates how much runoff and pollution has sort of come off the landscape throughout the years. We did we had the kids do the Secchi readings where we looked at see how clear the lake was. We did a reading with the dissolved oxygen at the different levels to see at which depth you get that sudden change in temperature and dissolved oxygen. We did some of that on the lake, and it was kind of a miserable day. It was pretty cold. It was 50 and it was rainy, but the kids were great and in good spirits as far as I could tell anyway. And then we went over to the creek and the preserve, and we poked around there and collected some aquatic insects and other things from the creek. And there's really not a whole lot of variety in the creek. It's not a particularly healthy ecosystem, and that's one of the things that we're working on. But it was kind of, I think it was good. It's a good illustration in that way, rather than if we went to a trout stream and said, oh, here's all these all these things. But we can also say, hey, here, look, we've only got like 2 different kinds of things in this creek, and here's the reason why, and here's what we could possibly do to change that situation. So we did that in the creek, and then we also looked at some of the aquatic plants that are in the pond at the preserve, and look there. Unfortunately, it's a little later in the year than we'd like to be out there, and that's one of the reasons too why we don't see a whole lot of diversity. But that's kind of the way it worked this year as far as scheduling, and then also the kids don't have school in July to get them out there. But I thought it was a good experience for me. I think the kids they seem to learn some, and so I was happy to do that, and we can continue to do that in the future. And then I don't know, maybe we could do something like that in the spring or have some sort of summer program as well, but there's options to expand stuff like it anyway. Travis Olston sent us a trapping application. We'll talk about that. I did a tour of the scout camp with Joel Wynn. Joel showed me around. I had never been at the scout camp, so he kind of explained the history of the place and whatnot. He gave me and showed me some improvements that had been done at the scout camp with an Eagle Scout project. And so I'll just pass those around. You can kind of see the before and after pictures there. And so that's something I talked with Joel about that we might be able to take advantage of is, Eagle Scout program or project, with some of the things that we do in the preserve, for instance. And so I talked, that we'd be willing to, facilitate, or take advantage of, some free labor from the scouts and whatnot. There's a lot of projects that can be done in the preserve over and above what we're planning to do. You think about birdhouses, we've got, I think, 11 bluebird boxes out there. We've got room for 50 or 60 of them, So if somebody wanted to take it upon themselves to do a project like that, it's certainly something that we would be interested in have happen, but not necessarily be high on our list of things to do. So I talked to Joel about that. Jimmy and I met with Jody Helland, I think is her last name, over at Ripley Waters. There's a lot for sale right off of Ripley Road down by the creek. And so we wanted to just kind of take a look at it and see if it would be, something of interest to us. I think anything that's for sale that is, adjoins the creek, is a wetland that's on the lake, or is property that borders the existing preserve is something that we should take a look at. Not necessarily something that we got to buy, but it's something that should definitely be, take a serious look at and see if it's something that we want to purchase. So we took a look at it. I think, for the price they're asking and for the size of the piece of property, it probably wasn't for that particular piece of property, it probably wasn't worth it for us to purchase that. But I think, like I said, we should always take a look at it.
Can you have anything to show us where it's at?
Well, I can tell you where it's at.
Beside the road.
Right as you turn on Lake Ripley Road,
Okay.
go down the hill, and it's right there. There's a big sign there on right off the road there.
Right side?
On Lakeside, yeah.
Oh, on the lake side.
Lakeside.
Go. Oh,
Left side. Left side if you're going down the hill.
Oh, left side.
Right there. Yeah.
There used to be a fence there, right? And that's been taken down.
Yeah.
That's basically like where you pull into your driveway then?
No, before my driveway.
Yeah, before, but it'd be to the south if you want to say, to the south of that. Right there in the curve. Yep, okay.
So yeah, it's this lot
Georgia,
right
you
here.
have something? Georgia, did you want to make a comment on that?
Well, it must butt right up to the little creek. Right?
Well, that was, and here we learned a lot. So we not only went and looked at this little piece of property because we were curious about it, we not only did that, we learned a lot about another piece of property that was behind it, which is that long mowed area that's
Right.
behind it. And
Yes,
this particular lady, and she is also part of an LLC or another company that actually owns that long grassy area.
Oh.
That's part of it that does go up along the creek. So, we learned that, and then they actually rent that back to the subdivision there. So we were asking a lot of questions, and, if any of that would ever be for sale, and, because that ran all the way along the creek, the
Right.
whole backside of it.
And it's probably got a lot of lawn fertilizer in it.
I imagine. It's pretty, they keep it pretty mowed there.
Mhm.
So, we were just curious to see what was there.
So the property for sale isn't itself right by the creek?
It doesn't abut the creek the way she explained it. It sounded like the other piece of property that they owned that are renting back to the subdivision did, though. So there's a little finger that went in between.
But if somebody put a house in there, wouldn't it affect the creek?
On the lot for sale?
Yes.
I mean,
Hard to
probably.
say,
I mean, you're
yeah.
developing right there. You'll have to remove trees to do it. Very similar to any other lot that's would be undeveloped and on the lake.
Mm-hmm.
It's very similar to that. I think it's 0.6 acres or something like that. It's you know.
Can you point to it there? What was that?
Yeah, I had it highlighted
Okay.
here. It's this guy here.
Getting back to George's point, is that part of the watershed? In other words, will the runoff go into the lake over that lot?
Yeah.
Yes.
Directly
Yeah.
into the creek.
Can I
Directly
ask-
into the creek.
Can I ask you a
it's like-
question? Can you tell me how much they're asking for?
I forget exactly. It was over right around, was it around 70,000?
70,000 or something?
Yeah.
For a buildable lot there?
Yeah. So it's a buildable lot. So it's, you know.
What was interesting to us was the piece of property that's right here. This stretch right here,
That's where the lawn is.
where the lawn is. That goes, you know, all the way back. I don't remember how many acres it was. It was like, how many did she say? 8 or
18.
18 acres? It was 18 acres there.
Well, there's this cut lot, the spot, and then there are the undeveloped wetlands over here.
So that's kind of what we learned and all that, and you know, we were wondering if they would be willing to, you know, to work with us on that whole piece, and because that would be valuable to us to have that whole stretch along that much of the
Yep.
creek,
Or maybe have a conservation easement.
or have a conservation easement. Yeah, either
Yep.
one, right? And all kinds of options, right? We were just curious, and we didn't know,
Yep.
you know, and we learned a lot. We got you know, we were reading got a copy of the bylaws of that whole subdivision and how all that works, so it was useful information. So we wanted to report that to the board, and you know, anytime these pieces of property that may be interest to us come up, you know, notify us for sure. Let us know, and we can go take a look and report back to the board to say, is this something that we may want to look at some point in time? But $70,000 just for that little lot was. We didn't
Well,
seem to
but-
find a lot of value in that yet.
Unless there's $70,000 worth of damage to
Well,
the
that's
lake.
that's why we looked. Right, that's why we looked.
Yeah, and I don't think so.
Okay, all right. Just asking.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman. I know up in Door County, they have some sort of a preservation trust or something up there. Anytime land becomes available, they take a look at it and they raise, this is private donations as I understand, but they raise money and they're trying to get money, get preserve what's left of Door County from development, as I understand it. Now, our mission is a lot more specific in terms of trying to protect the wetlands in that area. Have we ever talked about
Trust.
the creation of a nonprofit or something where we could get donations? People die, they could leave money to the trust if they were, you know, I mean, that we would, you know, that we could.
I don't know if we ever talked about
I don't recall
That
that
seems
conversation
like a
ever
decent
coming.
idea.
Well, I mean, you know, because people do have a affinity for this place and might be willing to help us with their own money.
Well,
There are a number of land trusts that are more or less private nonprofits in the county. Plus, the county has its own farmland preservation program, but that's farmland. But yeah, there's a lot of land trusts around. I can think of 2 for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And
I'm not
that's
even
what
sure if they get
more or
the
less do.
conservation easements, if that's one of their approaches, is if they can't buy it to get an easement. But it's a group that's just focused, as I understand it, up in Door County, that, you know, and it's not a governmental body, it's a nonprofit.
But they work with government.
Yes, right.
I mean,
And the Lake District has done some conservation easements with private property owners.
is that something we can research, or I mean, I don't know much about it.
That's something that we can do, and we do have a conservation easement, for instance, on one piece of property. But we don't really have, as far as I know anyway, we don't have a plan to help manage that piece of property.
Well,
So that.
I'd offer to do this. I know some of the people up in Door County. I could kind of just find out what they do.
Okay.
Sure.
You know, rather than you having to spend your time kind of.
Yeah. If we could get
with other
an
things you have
example
to
of
do.
what they do, how
Yeah.
it's set up.
It'd be a long-term thing anyway, so.
Yeah.
But yeah, good discussion on, and again, if any properties come up around this area that you think are valuable, you know, give us a call and let us know, and we'll go take a look at it.
Okay, that's should wrap up my manager's report.
Question for you, I'd like to share. Do you have this on your, I want to share this here. I took the dock out at Cedar Shores, and I never, 40 years I've been taking out the dock. I never saw it. It looked like a worm. It was all over the stands, even on the lift. I don't know if I ever saw anything like that before. 40 years I've never had that before.
What is it?
It looks like worms on the side. I
It's
mean,
not zebra mussels.
no, the zebra mussels were minuscule this year. And there's zebra mussels not directly on those. You know, the zebra mussels this year was hardly nothing to speak of. But that was, the zebra mussels were all around it, and I had, there was a number of stands, it was on my kids' wave runner lift, you know, on the tubes.
Zebra mussels.
No, these worms.
Looks
Yeah,
like
I've never
worms.
seen, yeah, we didn't have any on mine when we took mine out.
I say in 40 years I've been taking out dogs, I've never,
What I kind of guessed is what I think they might be is there's a lot of different little either microscopic or nearly microscopic organisms that form colonies, and they can form in weird shapes like that, and I think that's what it's something like that. So it's, you know, it's not a big worm or anything like that. It's a whole series of probably hundreds of thousands of, you know, individual little animals
next
living
page.
together just in a strange pattern.
Do we know what they are? I mean, is this something that,
upside down.
that we should do a little bit more research? Is it invasive species or is it just natural?
I couldn't tell you if it's native or not. It's one of those things, you know, once they dry out, you know, you really can't tell probably what they are. But I mean, it's something, if we got a live sample, we could, I can take a look at it, and if I don't know what it is,
yeah,
I can
I
send
thought
it
about
in.
it because it was just like I thought about after I power washed it, to scrape some off, because it was very, maybe a 1/16 thick.
Yeah.
Like I say, the zebra mussel was nilched through this year, but it was on multiple A-frame stands. It was also on my kids' lift for the wave runner and all that.
Yeah.
I just, like I say, I've never saw that before.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, any other questions of Andrew's report? Okay, seeing none, let's move on to old business, lake planning updates.
So I was going to kind of combine A and B there, so the lake planning update and the nutrient reduction plan update. I was hoping to get together, put a meeting with our planning committee together, but I wasn't able to get that going, so I don't have as much to report as I would hope. But so on our planning committee is Mike, Georgia, and myself, and Jimmy as well, and then Jay Sederson has asked to be on the committee, and Patricia Cicero from Jefferson County also. And so those are the people that are going to be on the planning committee for both of these projects. I also talked with Paul Garrison just kind of about some of the ideas that I had when I was specifically talking about the wetland restoration and that nutrient reduction component, to get his thoughts on a few things. And then I also talked to Sue Graham about what's the best way to get some of these projects funded. And so what we're looking to do, there was several different options that we could do, as we could get basically like 2 planning grants, one to handle the general lake management plan, and then another one to do the more wetland restoration, nutrient reduction program. And then, but what talking with her and what we kind of came up with was to do a lake management plan grant, which is going to cover the entire, you know, redo of our lake management plan. And so that's a grant that is due December 10th. I think the application is for that. And then with the nutrient reduction, wetland component would be to do a wetland restoration grant, which would also cover planning, but we could actually do some work now rather than just wait for it, so to speak. So that's a larger grant. So the lake planning grants are up to $25,000 that you can apply for money from the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources. Wetland restoration grants can go up to $100,000. So with that money, we could do planning, and then we could also kind of do a pilot project or something like that. And so that's the direction that we'll probably end up heading. So that's something that I need to talk to the planning committee about further, so we can kind of narrow that down. But so things are moving along. The wetland restoration grants, those are due February 1st. So we've got more time to work on putting together a grant for that. But that's going to be more complicated grant application to put together. So
those are the 2 deadlines we're looking at now, is the December 10th and the February 1st deadline?
Correct.
For the 2 grants we're looking at?
For the 2 grants that we're looking at. So I think that should be it. So I'm going to try to set up a meeting pretty soon to get the committee together. And
Okay, then I guess are we ready for the concerns and complaints
yeah, I think
procedure?
we're ready for the next spot.
Was that, yeah, so last board meeting, we discussed a process on how we could have residents fill out a complaint form so we could get them directed or possibly get the complaint resolved sooner and have a record of it. So we're going to hopefully have a draft form to show the board here what we were looking at.
Yeah, I've got a hard copy here to pass
Okay.
out. So I created just a really simple form. We had talked about doing. We had talked about adding some information in there about like what type of different projects. So for instance, like putting the pier planner in there and some other things about boat lifts and whatnot. But it was going to get really complicated really fast. And so basically what I came up here with was just a real simple introduction and a couple of contact locations for the, well, let me just go over them. So if you've got an immediate violation, like with you see somebody poaching fish or shooting ducks or something like that and they're not supposed to, I mean, you shouldn't contact us, you should go directly to the DNR. So there's the 1-800 number that the DNR has for there. They also have like a form that you can fill out online also. So basically violations with the DNR that are probably fish and wildlife, you want to have them handle it immediately so it goes directly to them. It's sort of like if you see something that the police should handle, call the police, don't call us. But also, other things, if somebody's built a pier that you think is too big or something like that, you can go directly contact the DNR if you want to. So also the number for Jefferson County zoning is on there and their website, and the town of Oakland police, just so that's available to people so they can contact them directly. But even if you contact them directly, it would be also nice for the Lake District to know what's going on. So we have this form that I can have a hard copy at my office, and we can have a version of this put up on our website so somebody could fill it out and mail it to us. So it just has where the suspected violation that you're seeing is, so you can put the address down or a description of the place if you don't have the address, a summary of a suspected violation, and then the contact information. So we can get back to you if we have further questions or whatnot. If somebody wants to remain anonymous, they can leave it out, but it's going to be better for somebody to give us information in case we're missing a piece of the puzzle or whatever.
Why don't you have your name and a phone number on here also?
Yep, I can do that. I can put that on the title.
I'm wondering if maybe it would be helpful to have a map on the back, so people could, if they didn't have an address or that, they just like mark this area.
X where the violation occurred.
Sure.
Not a bad idea.
I like it, Andrew. It's pretty straightforward.
After this is completed, Andrew, this form, what does the person do with it?
They would send it to us,
Okay.
and then we would pass it on basically to the proper authority. So if it's something that, if somebody cuts a tree down, at the shoreline or something like that, we can hand it off to the county zoning,
Okay.
and then or the DNR, whoever might be the proper authority.
Yeah, I think it's just a good way to follow through with the complaint that we received, instead of someone just having to wait for a meeting and say, hey, look, I saw somebody's sailboat out in the lake, what the heck's going on? You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah.
So I think this would be a good avenue for folks to be able to, to fill it out, give it to us, and this is what I saw, what's happening.
And then also I can fill this out too, so like,
or any of us could.
sometimes
right.
when somebody bumps into me, basically they'll say, hey, I saw X, Y, and Z. It's not something that they would necessarily say, I got a call about this, but they might mention it to me, and then I can fill it out, and so at least I have a record of it. You know, if we're getting a bunch of complaints about the same thing, then it might be something that we need to adjust on a, you know, through education. You know, if we're getting a lot of calls on peers or something like that, then we should be putting something in on, you know, on the ripples and say, you know, these are the regulations and, you know, stuff like that. So it might, you know, indicate that there's a need for some education out there. So it's good. Yeah, it's a good record for me to have.
No, is it planned to?
Hold on.
It's good.
Keith.
Two suggestions. I think this is great. I wonder if we could just have on here, please return completed form to Andros of I at the at the district. You know, just have that on there. And the other one, I don't know if it'd be helpful if we just put some typical examples of what you would call zoning about. For instance, you know, for i.e. So whatever this might be or that might be, or what you would call the police about, or what you would call the DNR about. Just kind of a couple, for instance, types things, just to kind of, you know, direct people's attention to, okay, now I get it. I should call the DNR on this. I should call zoning on this. The police. You know, just
yeah, we could look at that.
A couple examples.
Yeah.
Like reckless boat
Murder.
Yeah, murder on the police. Yeah.
Georgia.
On a murder.
It might also be helpful in conjunction with Keith's idea of saying delivered to Andrew, to say if it's evening or a weekend, you can put this thing in that
Dropbox?
Dropbox. Because we
Sure,
have a Dropbox.
Or maybe they just put it in the Dropbox.
Either way, yeah, we can just say there's a Dropbox at
We'll look at it.
at the hall, and we'll make sure we let Veronica know that you may get some of these and just drop them off at your desk.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mike.
Two things. Number one is regarding the Dropbox concept. There is a Dropbox down at the landing for money.
But the sheriff gets that. We don't.
Oh, it goes to the sheriff. I thought it went to the town.
Well, the town police.
Who opens the box?
The police. The town police.
Okay, so if we had one of these were in there, wouldn't they direct it to Andrew?
They wouldn't.
Maybe, I would hope.
Yeah, I mean, if we,
Yeah.
you know, if we mention it to them, maybe they'll fold this up and it'll end up with you. Number two, on the 1, 2, 3, 4, fourth line down,
Yep.
there appears to be a missing word. It's really on the fifth line. It says, and the information will be passed along. I believe you meant to say to them.
Yep.
I've got a question. When you were Mike, when you were talking about the landing, you're talking about the DNR launch?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
The city launch, yeah.
Okay, the $30 that they pay a permit for that they stick on their windshield by their mirror, didn't that override that where they don't use that anymore? Or do they still put the money into that thing?
No, there's a Dropbox there.
They still put
Yeah.
money in
Yeah,
that
there's
thing?
a Dropbox, but that's just for the day fee, not for an annual pass.
So okay, so if you don't buy the $30 pass, then what is it, $7? What does it cost?
Parking,
I believe it's $7.
I think, yeah.
Annual pass is $20 for
20.
residents. I think it might be 30 for
for non-
non-resident.
Okay, so that's still used?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I know, last I talked to the chief, they were gonna get a new one because it's very difficult to check the current Dropbox, but that's about all I know.
I guess good idea, but I would still prefer they come directly here. That's just a direct,
Yeah.
you know.
So I think they would probably appreciate it if we didn't tell them to use the box.
And I don't know how often they check it. It doesn't sound like they check it that
Sit in
often,
there
so
forever.
they might
Yeah.
be there for a month before we get it. It would be best if they could get it here.
Get it here.
Yeah,
well, then we have to put our address on there.
I would say our
Yeah.
address should be on here. Yeah, yeah, it should probably be right up here, huh, at the top.
Yep.
Yeah.
I got a note for that.
And you say you have this on the website where they could?
I think we should put it on the website as a Word
As a
doc.
PDF?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Where they
Yeah,
could-
so you could download it easily. Yeah.
I guess the other thing is, just a thought, on the next ripples next spring, to go out with this, so people are aware that it, how do we get this out?
Right, yeah,
to-
we'll have a one going out probably in December. As the winter one comes out, I think typically in December, so we can put it in that one.
That would be a good one that they have, because like you say, I've called the DNR
Yeah,
based on some ice fishermen, because they left, but they left everything out the lake. You know, what's his name from Waterloo came down, and the next day it was all gone. He contacted the people, and they came out and cleaned it up, so.
yeah. And I think that's something too that we want to put in the ripples is some of the things that people might have questions about, or don't realize that they need a permit for or whatever, to put one of those examples in each issue of the Ripples, so that we can discuss the boat lifts, for instance, and that they've got to be taken out, or they have to be attached to a pier or the shore or something like that. Because a lot of people don't know that stuff, and if you just take one article for each issue and talk about one of those issues, I mean, you've got years worth of stuff there, but then you're not overloading people at the same time. So, so that's a good thing to also put in the newsletter.
Yeah. Okay, with Georgia?
I have one more addition to a possible word change.
Okay.
Okay.
That last sentence, I think it's just a little bit unclear. And what if it said the Lake Ripley Management District is not a permitting or enforcing agency?
Is not?
Is not a permitting or enforcing agency.
Okay.
I think that's a little
Yep.
Be a
improvement.
little clearer, maybe.
Yeah, I like it. Thank you.
But in general, this is good.
Yeah, I think it's a
Like,
good start.
this is
Okay. Any other questions on the draft here? And we'll have Andrew clean this up and we'll get it ready to go.
Good idea. I like
Yeah,
it.
good job. Thanks. All right, let's move on to new business. Discussion of who owns the Outlet Creek and its rocks/dam. And Andrew's been doing some research on that. Interesting to hear the different people and what they say. I think this question has come up many times over the years of who actually owns the rocks and the dam. And
Yeah, and I wish, and we've never really gotten a straight answer, and I still don't have a straight answer. So what we know, or what we're pretty sure about anyway, that the creek bed is privately owned. So you can own the bed of a creek, or the bed of part of a lake, depending upon if it was a reservoir or whatnot. But anyway, we have a small creek. And the way the property is laid out, the creek bed is owned by that property owner. Now that doesn't give them a whole lot of rights to do anything to it. So what it means, I mean by that, it's a public navigable waterway. So if you've got a canoe, you can go up and down it. You can, sit there and anchor in the channel for as long as you want. They can't yell at you or anything, because you're in a public navigable waterway. So that also means that the keep your feet wet rule applies. So if you wanted to wade through there for whatever reason you wanted to, you could wade through walking on that creek bed, which they own. You can walk through there. And so now they've got that bridge there. So if you wanted to walk all the way down to the creek, down to Park Road, you can get out of the creek, step onto their property to get around the bridge there. So you can use their private property if for that sole purpose of maintaining your navigation through that navigable waterway. So if you've got a canoe, you can pull the canoe out and get it around. So it's just like any other trout stream. So the state of Wisconsin has that public rights
doctrine.
Public rights doctrine has been a real important part of the state of Wisconsin for well over 100 years, and so that applies here. So that doesn't mean, so the property owner there can't yell at you. They can't, because you're not violating any laws, even though you're on their property. If you go about those two things, if you're keeping your feet wet, if you're just coming onto, onto their property so you can get back into the creek. So, so there's really no gray area there, as far as I can tell anyway, and from talking with the DNR. But so they're moving these rocks and stuff like that. That's where this kind of this gray area has, because there's a gray area as if there's a dam there or not in the first place. The DNR sort of recognizes that there is, and also recognizes that there isn't. It's kind of confusing. So they've inspected that as a dam before, but then they don't say it's a dam. I don't know. It's confusing because it is kind of a weird structure. It really isn't a structure. It's a pile of rocks that just get shifted around by nature. Sometimes people do go in there apparently and move the rocks around. So if you move a lot of rocks, if you take them out, that could be considered dredging. But if you move a couple of rocks, how are you going to prove that somebody moved a couple of rocks? So they said it's really not enforceable. So unfortunately, Roger came up with this question, and it's been asked before, and I really wish I had a concrete answer from it. But talking to a couple people with the DNR, looking through the old documents that we've collected since the 1930s, there's really no there is really no concrete answer as to the rocks. You know, what's happening there. The creek bed, as near as we can tell, is owned by the private individuals, but like I said, that really doesn't give them a whole lot of rights to do anything with it. You know, so if they wanted to put rocks along the bank for, you know, erosion of those banks, they could get a permit to do that and that sort of thing. But I mean, they can't, you know, like I said, they can't kick people off of that property. They can't put rocks in there for the purpose of creating a dam without permits and stuff like that. So Roger, I wish I had a definite answer for you, but that's as close as I could get.
So what's the sum it all up under what? What's the answer?
We don't know, and they don't know. I think we'd almost need like a court ruling to actually clarify this.
What does that mean, court ruling?
So like if
The Lake District wanted to file suit against who, though?
Yeah, I mean, well,
I think you might be able to ask the Attorney General for an opinion on something like that.
but with a lot of these issues with the DNR, you know, it seems like it should be cut and dry, but there isn't, because there is just a lot of either gray area or there's overlap. Yeah.
What would stop us from just leaving it the way it is? The last meeting we had here, you stated that nature runs in cycles, and that there are drought seasons which are good, and there are flood seasons which are good. And
Mhm.
nature has a way of balancing itself out.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you just leave it the way it is? Is that bad? It's been that way since 100 years.
Our plan, I don't think our plan was to change anything.
Okay,
I
so
think
we're
it was
not
just
gonna
a
put
clarification.
concrete dam or vote on any of
You know,
that?
like I say, this has been going on, like he said, for many years. You know, from O.H. Perry, some of the documents said O.H. Perry, people talked, because O.H. owned a whole bunch of land here.
Yeah.
And has the,
Yeah.
Jim, has the township had any questions as far as people contacting the township on this?
I haven't heard anything.
You know, so, you know, Keith wanted to know more about water levels, so, you know, I went back through the, you know, stuff, and what I kind of think is, you know, as we come up with the next management plan, is that the Lake District should have a policy in there that says, yeah, we want a dam, we want to leave things the way they are, or whatever, just so when the issue comes up, we have something that can say, yes, we do have a policy on this, and then this is what we're going to follow. Not that I can't change.
Dad, do you have a comment?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. You go ahead.
My question was, what if they want to get, all of a sudden get mad at us and take all the rocks out? What will happen to the lake?
We don't know
How
for
much will you lose?
We don't know for sure. I mean, I think that that pile of rocks, which is really just a rapids, probably does have some effect on water levels. Probably not a whole lot.
It wouldn't be too much, you
I don't think it would be too much. Now, if it was 5-6 inches, that could be a major headache for somebody who's put their boat lift in a certain area. Now they can't get their boat off or something like that. So 6 inches isn't probably going to make a whole lot of difference in the terms of the ecological aspect of the lake. But I mean, for a specific user, it might be a major inconvenience. So the lake isn't going to drain. We're not going to see any significant impact as far as that. But for some people, that they need that 6 inches to move around. They've been used to that for the decades. So it all depends upon your point of view, really.
Well, Lake Koshkonong, for instance, is formed naturally by the bedrock comes up pretty high down by Newville down there, and so even if you didn't have a dam there, the lake would still exist. Is that true for this? I mean, if you took all the rocks that are loose rocks out, would there be bedrock that the lake's been here for a long time, presumed, right? And before anybody messed around with the rocks and so on, maybe it has some solid bedrock feature that forms the lake. And I guess the other thing I think is if you're messing with it by hand, that's one thing. If you have a machine moving rocks, that'd be a whole different kettle of fish.
Well, at some point, like Andrew said, it becomes a dredging thing. And I don't know
Yeah,
at what
yeah.
point the DNR decides, hey, look, you're dredging now because you're removing all these rocks.
Machinery, I think, would be one of them.
Well, yeah, I would think so, but even by hand, I think you could consider it dredging if you were just out there
Yeah.
pulling all the rocks out.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you.
yeah.
Why do you think pulling the rocks out by hand is considered dredging?
Well, I think that was kind of what they indicated. Didn't they say the dredging word when you asked them about?
Yeah, that's what they mentioned. There is manual dredging is in the code somewhere for certain channelers or something like that. You used to, for existing navigational channels, you were allowed to manually dredge like a certain, cubic yards per year or something like that. So it doesn't apply here, but the DNR does recognize you going in there with a shovel and filling up a wheelbarrow as dredging, basically.
But these are rocks that you pick up by hand. These aren't huge rocks.
Yeah, I don't know how easy they're going to be to pick up. They're pretty good size.
There's a
some
couple
of
of
them.
big ones in there, but I mean,
But I
people
mean,
have thrown bricks in there and stuff too. So there's
Yeah,
a whole
small
variety,
stuff.
of stuff in there.
Debris in there like that.
Yeah.
You could pick that out, put it in your boat, haul it away to the landing, and then dump them there, and then someone can come and take them someplace. I mean, it's work, manual
Oh,
labor.
yeah.
I know a lot of people are against manual labor. They don't want to touch it.
I've got a
Usually they
question.
sit down with a Eagle Scouts.
How it's a great example of why there are flood stages and why we need them and why we need droughts. So I'm pretty sure 100 years from now, there won't be a dam there and they'll be shooting the breeze and stating what they should do with it. And they'll come up with the answer that they shouldn't do anything with it
Maybe.
and leave it alone and let it do its own thing, right?
Just for your own information, just on how I've been measuring it since I've been doing it back since 1915. The lake over the last 3 years is 9 3/4 inches. It's the difference from the lowest it's ever been to the highest it's ever been.
How much?
9 3/4 change over the last
9 inches, okay.
9 3/4 inches over the last since 2015 to date. So I mean between the highest that I've measured to the lowest that since I've been measured since I've been doing this, generally roughly speaking, is 9 3/4 inches.
May I speak?
Yeah.
But it's always within that range. Okay, so it hasn't varied more than
No more than 10 inches the last.
Yeah, not even a foot.
up or
Okay.
down.
I mean, we haven't had any major droughts or major floods since, really in that time period, but on average, that's not much of a change up
Yeah,
or
and I
down.
think it was 87, 88 when we had the drought. And I remember this here because at that time, at my summer cottage at the time, which I owned, you could have walked around this lake on the shoreline because the water level was probably 8 to 10 feet out
Yeah.
from it. I mean, other than ducks, you probably could have walked around this whole lake, on the lake.
I remember that.
Yeah, and all that. So I mean, the lake was really that was a hot summer because I remember that summer, Labor Day weekend, from my father-in-law's place where we're heading out right now. We almost walked over to the public landing. Was down there swimming with my grandparent or mother and father-in-law's in the lake, and it was with the neighbors, and we probably walked halfway over to the public landing. It was out probably that how far we walked out. It's unbelievable.
Okay. Well, again, this is just information. There was no action plan here. With information on what we could find out about this and report out to you guys, and it was a good discussion.
Good.
Roger.
Right now, with the water levels so high, and they've been high for the last couple of years, I got water up in my fields because it's not draining out. The marshes are full. Across the road from me, where the water is really hot because but they run off of Highway 12 now. They've changed the ditch. It all runs into the marshes to the north or towards Cedar Lake, Red Cedar Lake. So we have a lot of water out there now. You could say someone, I've heard it before, DNR loves it when it's high. Well, I don't. I realize that DNR is the big god on this planet around here, but with a small g. But It's just that it isn't that way. That's why this thing, this outlet, needs to be cleaned out so that it will flow for these high water levels, to get that water down. When someone says good, you know, good for high water levels, well, it might be good to say that, but it's not good for anyone who lives in areas where that water gets backed up. Now, it's not just around the lake I'm talking about the watershed, particularly where I am. It's not drained because it can't, because there's so much water in Lake Ripley, so high a water. Now, we did have droughts before '87. There was one back in, I would say it was '78, something like that, lasted 2 years, and then the water just about dried up in the marshes now. It wasn't that you could walk all over the place in the marsh, but there's always a low spot that would have some water. Any bog would still have water in it somewhere. But that's what real droughts are. We just haven't had that now for a number of years.
My backyard has been flooded. Oh, I don't use it, okay, but because I have a bigger lot there, but that's been wet all summer long. That's the second. 20 years ago it was like that, and now it's that this year again. It's not dried up.
A lot of water.
What are you saying? I get it in my backyard.
A lot of water this year.
But it's just that that outlet is the only way to get the water out of here. That little outlet, and bring it down to a reasonable level.
And it's the only way to keep the water in also.
Well, getting the water in right now is not the problem, getting the water out.
I understand that.
Well, you also have to understand what's downstream.
Oh, I realize that.
Yeah, downstream will back the stream up. You know, just look what's right now. It takes, when the water from Wisconsin gets down, say the Rock River, down through Janesville, down through Rockford, down to the time it gets down. It takes time for that water to get out. So just doing something there, it doesn't make any difference. The water, you know, downstream, if the levels are there, the water can't flow.
Well, I know that crawfish in the rock, they're very high.
Yeah.
I mean, way up over the dam. And they probably got their dams open everywhere, all the way, try to, because there is so much water coming up.
Right.
Because maybe the rain's there more, bigger in the watersheds and all that. But doing something here compared to all the years I'd listened to people like back in '96, they said, we can't do nothing, it's private property. That was the answer. And you at Lake Boards, everybody was there was quiet when that was said. There was no challenge to that or anything. And that's why I brought this up here, just to get something to understand. So before it was just the words. It's private property, don't mess with that landowner, they'll get mad, whatever, and that's it. That's not a proper way to run a lake district. You got it out there without some discussion or some better understanding and possibly do something like these stones. It restricts the flow. It isn't stopping the inflow, but it does restrict it so you have less water going down.
Yeah. I think the only thing that I did see where, you know, they talk about the major restriction of the flow, and this is mostly during flooding, or, you know, really high water, even higher than it is right now, is that Park Road is the real dam in that case. So if, like, in 2008, this is my understanding, you know, I don't have a long-term experience here, but from my reading of what it is that Park Road is the kind of the major, it's the major thing that backs up the flow during really high water. So like right now, you know, the water isn't flowing around the creek and stuff like that, and Park Road probably isn't having any effect, you know, at all compared to just the natural restriction there right directly at the outlet. But that's the only documents that I've seen that really state, you know, what the effect of the dam is, and it's not even really the dam, it's just that, yeah.
Well, even like right now, you look at the creek out of Cambridge going over to Rockdale. The water, you can actually see water. It's not up to the road, but I mean, I've never seen water that high, even And, you know, that creek there, I mean, even the wetlands, like halfway across there to the park area. I mean, it's higher than water
Right.
there I've ever saw
That's
before.
what I mean. You're gonna-
So, I mean, it's not so much here, it's basically the whole wetland is all saturated. So,
Yeah.
and that's where this water goes.
And when I remove those logs and all that, especially all the aquatic plants that had wedged themselves in every single crevice in there and basically formed like a real, because I mean, this pile of rocks is just a pile of rocks, you know. So there's a rock here, the water can sneak around and stuff like that. And with the logs and then all those aquatic plants, it filled up every little crevice like that. So when I got there and started pulling stuff out, and after I removed it, I assumed that there probably was some sort of effect on the lake level. Now it might have been 1/4 of an inch or something like that, but there was something going on there. You know, it might have been 1/2 inch. If it was more than an inch, I can't imagine it being more than an inch. But I mean, there is some effect there. I mean, but we just, you know, without doing a full-blown study, we don't really know. And what would be the purpose of that? Because it's not a static structure, because it is just a bunch of rocks that move. If it was a concrete bar, you know, you could actually do a study and say the effect of this is always this. But if we come back here in spring, that pile of rocks is going to be different because the ice moved it around. So you can't do a
Study.
you
on
can't
it.
do get a real specific number out of it unless it is a, you know, a stable structure.
Well, I'm not in favor of any study, because that's just a bunch of words and numbers. You have it, everybody else doesn't have it to counter it. But rocks do trap debris. When they do that, you can see the flow is going to be restricted. Now it goes underneath the water, but it does. So if you had the rocks on a stone, and when I say rocks, and some people think a rock is this size, but rocks are generally this size, you know, big. You take some of them out of there, and you do get a place for the debris. I realize it's debris, and it'll go down somewhere else, and then maybe clog up the culvert and be hard.
Walt, did you have one more
Yeah,
comment?
it just occurred to me that it's kind of interesting that if this is private property, is it not, that we're talking about?
Yep.
And yet the DNR recognized you as an authority to be able to move stuff out of a private property to change the water flow. That's like admitting that something, I don't know what it admits, but it gives you some authority over private property, you know, an hour before that you didn't have, really.
Yeah,
We
that's
can
that's
discuss
why I
this,
asked,
but-
because there's stuff, you know, jammed in private property.
Yeah,
You know,
that's kinda
does that
weird.
become a natural feature? Then that's sort of theirs. You know, if a branch falls in your, you know, if a branch fell in their yard, I wouldn't go out there and, you know, remove it for them. You know,
Right.
or expect that I could. But yeah, that's why. I mean, it seems weird. We're not supposed to move rocks, but we can move the log. And
Well, I recognize that affects a lot more people than just that private property owner, and
Yeah.
and that you are more or less
It's
representing
an-
all that.
And that's it's a real complicated issue, and that's why I think we, you know, need to formulate a policy, and probably, you know, at a board meeting isn't, you know, the best spot. I kind of envision that, you know, we're going to probably take up different pieces of the management plan and have different, you know, specific meetings for it. So like things about water quality and that, you know, things that are associated with that. But with water levels, that might be its own meeting because it is so complicated and also a hot button issue. So I think that's kind of where we need to go, is to come up with some kind of policy, because as near as I can tell, we've never come up with a direct policy, other than at times, I don't know if it's the Lake District, but other groups have said we definitely want a dam, and they've had blueprints drawn up and stuff like that. That's prior to the Lake District being here. So I mean, that's a policy, you know. And if our policy is we want a dam, we need to have a set of goals and how we can go about it and achieve that. And so I think that's what we need in the future, and to come up with over the next year is a policy as to what we want to do, or not, if we want to do anything. You know,
Well,
just-
and this is good discussion, and I'd like to keep moving, but I mean,
Yeah.
let's keep these ideas. That's why we brought it forward as information. We certainly will have more discussion on this issue many years to come, but I mean, like Andrew said, if we can get something put in place in the management plan that will continue to talk about it,
Yep.
It's all great discussion at this point. So I thank you for all your work on this, working with the DNR, and I'm sure we'll continue to ask some questions about these rocks.
Playing with Mother Nature.
It's interesting. It is. Okay, let's move on. Discussion and possible action on Lake District Preserve Management, the fall and the winter plans.
Okay, so we have a few things that we were going to do the herbicide applications for buckthorn, garlic mustard, and Dame's rocket in the preserve earlier this spring, and I kind of looked at that and saw that we probably wasn't a very effective use of our funds at this time. And so we have some extra money to spend in the preserve budget. And so there's a few projects that we're going to look at doing in the preserve, and I'll talk about a couple of them today, and then we'll also bring some more up at the November meeting. And one of the things that we need to do is clear out some brush in order that Wisconsin Waterfowl Association wants to repair one of the ditch plugs on the far eastern part of the preserve. There was a ditch plug that and then the creek sort of moved around it, and so they want to go in there in the winter time and repair that plug. And so to get back there, we've got to clear out some brush that's grown up. And I've got an estimate from Ty Roloff from Awesome Landscaping. They do our trail mowing and maintenance, and they mow our fire break and stuff like that. So he gave me an estimate of $950 to do the removal of brush there. And so we've got some other things coming up with some other brush problems and stuff like that. And so the brush that I'm thinking of is smaller and stuff that we can have volunteers deal with. I can deal with it should I have the time. And then also I've talked to one of our harvest crew who might be interested in some extra money to go out there and to remove brush. And Walt had talked about lending us the walk behind brush mower that you've got, which would work great for that. The stuff that I was talking about Ty moving is a lot bigger than probably your brush cutter could have. He's got like a track bobcat thing with a big brush cutter on it, so he can handle some bigger stuff. So looking at doing that, and then also I think it would be good for us to have a hand brush mower. So it's basically like a weed whacker with a brush cutting blade on it, so that we can maneuver in places where a walk behind mower or something can't get at, where stuff on a steep slope, or if we've got a couple logs are down or something like that, so you can get in there and remove the brush. So I think that would be a good thing for us to have for the long term in managing the preserve, because we're getting a lot of brush in areas where we've spent money to restore prairie. And so if we allow some of these brush and young trees to continue to grow, basically we're going to lose that investment that we've made in the prairie. So we've gone in there and tilled it and planted seed and cultivated it. We've had some fires in the past that we've prescribed berms that we've had in the past to manage it. We can't afford, and nor should we, burn the entire preserve every year. That's not a good practice, but having these different brush cutting options allow us to target these little specific areas where we've got some issues. So I got some quotes on a steel brush trimmer and accessories. It was about $710 for that. And then also using some of our labor from the preserve budget for our harvest crew guy to do some of the work for us. So I guess what I'm asking for is to approve some funds for having Awesome Landscaping doing the brush removal. So that was $950. And then at this time anyway, the purchase of the trimmer and accessories for $710.
Now, is that those two amounts of money coming from the savings that we've gathered from the stoppage of the spraying?
Yeah, so that would come right out of the preserve budget.
So you already got the money in the budget.
We already got the money in the budget.
So it's just extra money that we're.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know if I need to ask for it, but I, definitely wanted to go through the board understands, what we're planning to do with the.
Okay, the only thing I quit, purchasing, you say steel,
Yeah,
does that place, do they service that unit then?
yeah, they would.
Because I'm very adamant about where I purchase something. Like if you go to Sears or you go to Lowe's and you get something, I had a chainsaw, well, they have to send it to Green Bay in maybe 2 weeks or 3 weeks before they get it back.
Yeah.
So I became a believer many years ago, just like I had my chainsaw done, and it was a steel, and I took it right to, they rent and they also sell, and they service their own equipment. So that's the only thing I request, that wherever you purchase it, that they fix it right there versus sending it out.
Mike?
I'm assuming you're talking about using the steel dealer here in Cambridge?
I had gotten a quote from Oshkosh where I live, just because I was familiar with that dealer. I don't know who deals in steel.
Right behind the Ace Hardware.
Are they behind there?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, on that road.
There's one in Whitewater.
Is
too.
a
Okay.
steel dealer.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're very good.
They're all over.
All right.
And they repair there too, I believe, parts and
Yeah.
service.
Yeah, I think their prices are standard, so I could
Yeah,
probably
I would get it
get the
there,
same
yeah.
price there too.
We,
Or sorry.
I just want to point out, we have about $9,000 left in the preserve budget for the current year.
Yeah.
Okay. So the money's there. We don't need anything there. You just informing the board that you'd like to spend that on those purposes.
I've got a
Mike?
question. Would it behoove us not to buy it and to let Ty from Awesome Landscaping do it? He's probably got a trimmer. That would be more money? Would it be more cost effective if we bought that tool? Or let Ty do
It would be more cost effective. So like this summer, I have a similar kind of thing. I got a $100 version of it, so I needed to trim a path and stuff like that, to use it for a couple hours to get through the wetland, because the stuff was getting crazy. So, but I didn't, so to use it there, what I'm trying to say is it'd be much more cost effective if
we
for
had
us
it in-house.
for us to
There
have
could be
that.
other places too in the reserve where you don't
Well-
want to use it.
Yeah.
Well, as I've said before, we do the same procedure at the town park in Koshkonong.
Mhm.
And so I ended up buying just more or less what you're saying, not the model you're talking about. Mine's a stepper down below that, but I paid $400 and some for that whole arrangement. It really works very good in conjunction with a little larger machine like that walk behind job that I got.
Mhm.
And then, like you're saying, Ty Roloff's equipment would do maybe bigger trees.
Mhm.
So, but between the brush trimmer, which will maybe 1/2 inch, does a pretty good job on that.
Mhm.
Above that, then you spend a lot of time trying to cut it. But the walk behind will go up to an inch, inch and a half, and I think you
Yeah.
can bend over with that thing. It'll chop it off. So between those two, we've cleaned out a good chunk of the town park, and exactly what you're saying. When we go
Yeah.
back and burn it, it's pretty opened up. It takes a couple volunteers, but if they have equipment, you can find volunteers, I think. And
Mhm.
anyway, I second the idea that the steel equipment and their brush cutting blade does do the job.
Are you looking for a motion, or are we
I
just
don't
giving
need a
us
motion. The
information?
money's there in the
Let's
budget. I think it's just information, and we can keep rolling here if everybody's okay with it.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for the updates on that and getting some quotes, Andrew. Discussion and possible action on joining the local government investment pool. And Mike, I think this was something you wanted to talk about.
So true. I read an article in Lake Tides, and this was brought to my attention. The state of Wisconsin has an investment group that handles. They keep coming. In fact, I'll tell you what. Why don't I just read rather than me say it? Let me read a quick statement that they put out in their literature about us. It says, the local government investment pool provides a secure investment option for all Wisconsin local governments, including counties, cities, villages, towns, school districts, and other entities. And I've already talked to them, and we would be a qualifying entity. By pooling local government funds with state funds, local governments may be able to realize generally higher yields over time. The local government investment pool provides local governments with the best of both worlds, availability of funds and improved earnings. The local government investment pool funds are invested by the State of Wisconsin Investment Board. The daily operations are managed by the Wisconsin Department of Administration and the State Controller's Office. So I wanted to give an idea. If you recall, a year or two ago, oh, maybe not that long, we talked about putting some of our money, excess funds, into certificates of deposit, possibly laddering them out. I went to the local banks, and the best I could get at that time was like 50 or 60 basis points. And our demand account, our checking account, was somewhere in that same area. So it really was almost a push, and because we're dealing with the local bank, we decided not to take any action at all. This organization comes along, and they've been around for a long time. They are substantial. They have over almost $4 billion under investment. At the end of August, average daily balance in this investment pool was almost $4 billion. So what I did is I went back through January of this year, and I determined what our rate of return was on our demand account at what used to be the Cambridge State Bank, which is now whatever it's called now, and subject to change here in the near future. When you talk about interest rates on investments, one interest is considered 100, what they refer to as basis points. So 45 basis points would be roughly 1/2 of 1%. So going back to January this year, in our demand account, we never went over 1/2 a basis point, or excuse me, 1/2 of 1% of interest. We were always at 41, 46 basis points. Keep in mind, 100 basis points is 1%. In July and August, we did go over. We're at 56 basis points. So during the first 8 months of the year, my calculation, we earned $385 of interest on our demand account. Had we had that same amount of money, and I'm not suggesting we put all of our money into this, but had we had the same amount of money on an annualized basis, we would have had $2,088 of interest, compared to an annualized basis for our demand account of about roughly $600. So you can see, having our money, again, had we had 100% of our money into this pool, we would have earned interest greater than 3 times what we did earn. How could we not consider putting money into this local government investment pool? And the only drawback I see is that we're taking money out of the local economy and we're moving it into the investment pool. Granted, it's the Wisconsin investment pool, so it really helps municipalities and so forth throughout the state. But we would be, more than tripling our earnings. So I wanted to bring this to the attention of the board. The sheet you have in front of you gives you a little background on the investment pool. At the end of September, they had $3.5 billion under investment. That was their average balance. They earned $6 million in earnings, and their return on investment was 2%. Their fees are extremely low. They earned $6 million in earnings, and their fees were almost $9,000. So you can see the fees that they charge to do this work, extremely low. They pass that on to their members. In order to become a member, we do have a resolution that if we decide to do it, we have to sign and file with them. Basically, they invest in
U.S. treasuries, U.S. agencies, certificates of deposit, banks acceptance, time deposits. I mean, they're also in commercial paper. So, their portfolio, 100% of their portfolio is really in very secure type investments. And this is not a new organization. I mean, these people have been around since 74, 75. And on the last page, I think you have that also. It's a list of their returns going back to 2015. And you can see, back then they were paying 14 basis points, October 2015, 14 basis points. Now they're paying over 200 basis points, which is 200 basis points would be 2%. And then they give you their comparison of treasury bill rates, repurchase agreements, and so forth. Again, the only downside is we're taking money out of the local economy that's sitting at the Cambridge State Bank, or what is the name of the bank now? I can't.
United Community.
United Community? Okay, United Community Bank. We're taking the money out of there and we're moving it to this investment pool if we decide to do it. If we decide to do it, I would suggest we take no more than $75,000 and move it in there. This is sort of like a money market account. If you're familiar with those, you have access, in their case, overnight. You just call them or text them and say, I need $75,000, $50,000 transferred back to our demand account. So overnight, they would send the money back to our bank here in town. If we had that kind of a purchase, it's highly unusual that we'd ever have that kind of a purchase. Yes, sir.
You pointed out October of 2015 at the basis points there, and then, but if you look at that calendar of change there, the numbers, it's steadily going up. Why? And so, why does it go up? Why was it low? It was fairly low to begin with, and presumably you can go back down again.
I think it's just,
it may always be better than the bank can give us, but
it's probably always going to be better than the bank. Now, with that said, let me just go back. Many, many years ago, when it was Cambridge State Bank, it was under local management. They had an agreement with our district that they would pay us not only their stated rate of return, they would also give us a bonus that was computed monthly on our average balance equal to the government rate. So back there this is going back into probably the 90s sometime, they used to give us two interest rates on our bank statement. Our basic rate, which everyone received, and our bonus rate, which brought us up to the pool. But you can see back then in 15, the pool was very low, and our rates, when I did the analysis, I want to say 6 months ago, it might have been last year, we were not too far off from what the pool, the government rate, was paying. So I think at that time I said we should monitor it, and bringing it up today is sort of a result of this monitoring. And I want to get the board's opinion on joining this pool and considering transferring money out. Again, there are some perceptions of being a negative perception, if you will, because we are taking money out of the local economy.
But we also will be putting it back in at 3 times of the rate, because we'll have that extra money to spend. So I mean, it offsets anything. In my mind, if you're getting 3 times your return, we're just going to reinvest that money into the local.
We're reinvesting the interest. We're not
Correct.
Reinvesting the principal.
Correct.
The 70, again, let's use 75,000 as an example. That 75 would be sitting somewhere else, and they would be investing that money. And being that they're investing in treasuries and so forth, that money goes, wherever it goes. I don't want to make a political statement. So the fact is that money does leave the area, the principal.
Mr. Chairman, I think this is a great idea.
Okay.
I mean, I don't see how we can't do it. I mean, it's creating more revenue for our district, which is less tax money we have to raise. Hundreds of local bodies in Wisconsin use it.
Yes.
It's tested. If the rates aren't competitive, we can always move the money.
Back.
It's a money market account. We can move them to CDs, we can move it back to the bank, but at least to have this as an option makes absolute perfect.
The other alternative is to, rather than put the money into a money market pool, would be to buy a certificate of deposit. The current rates now on CDs are probably right around 2%. Now, I don't know what they are at our local banks, but I think if we have a sit down
Like a 1-year CD or
well,
a 2-year?
Yeah, we'd probably go out a little bit longer, but remember, that's fixed money. We can't touch it. So if all of a sudden this piece of property becomes available that we were talking about earlier, and we wanted to move on it, if the bank, you know, any penalties are assessed at the bank level. It's not a federal penalty. So the bank could charge us a penalty for withdrawing that money
Yeah, I don't
early.
like that idea.
I used to be in a different life, the treasurer of a high school in Illinois, and we had millions of dollars, $4 or $5 million in the what they call the Illinois Investment Treasurers Pool, and basically it's the same as Wisconsin. Basically, they invest in CDs and so forth, and at that time. It was a money market, so I needed the money to cover a payroll. I just wire transferred. They just wire transferred the money. There was never any years ago here in Cambridge. We had monies in CDs, and we had a need at that time. I think it is when we bought the original Preserve, and we had to break one of the certificates of deposit, and they waived any penalties for us as an accommodation. We do receive donations from the 2 banks in town. When we bought the Preserve, the additional 40 acres just recently, we received donations from both of those. I think if we start pulling money out of their bank, they may not be as accommodating as far as making donations to us. And those are the things we have to sort of consider when we make our decision here.
Georgia.
And that bank is
I'm sorry, I
being
can't hear you.
that bank is being purchased by a bigger entity
Yes.
in Poynette, I think, or wherever it is. There's going to be another name change
There's going to be
in
another.
January. I'm told.
And when that happens, management changes. You know, my son works for a bank, and he's on his 4th bank right now. And when he got his bank in Cedarburg there, got beat up by BMO, the policies changed, management changed.
Excuse me.
So managers change when bank change. So that to me is not a
Mike,
good sign.
explain to me the $75,000 threshold. So you're
I just
recommending that we
used-
don't take any more out at this time?
Yeah, I came up with $75,000. We have about $130,000 in our account. In January, we're going to get our first payment of real estate taxes. So if we left $50,000 in there, or 25 and 30, say $55,000, there's more than enough money to get us through the end of the year into our first estimated payment. That was just a number I came up with. We could probably do it if we transferred $90,000 into it. In fact, let's be honest, we could probably transfer $100,000 into it and then, or more, and then just use their overnight payment. It's just a matter of watching our dollars quicker so we don't overdraw. You know,
What do you feel comfortable with?
Again, I just said 75 to get the conversation going. I mean, once we get into it and we start working with it, we may put more money into it.
Okay, so
I
like
know
to start
pretty
with
much
75.
what I need every month. I need probably on average about $20,000 a month to operate our, oh, that's too high. Quarter, $20,000 a quarter I need to operate for, you know, salaries and wages and rent and all those other things. So if we put the, you know, 125,000 in, we'd have a little bit of cushion, and I could move the money in the first of the month. Now, this would be something that we'd have to monitor very closely so we don't, you know, overdraft our demand account, which we would. I mean, it's, I'll be honest with you, it's very nice having all this money in our demand account because a bill comes in, we just pay it. You know, we don't have to time it, we just pay it. And
So would 100,000 be okay?
yeah, I think probably we could get through with 100,000. I'm not asking permission to put 100,000 in because I think the board has already given me that permission many, many months ago to do that.
I'm just trying to get
I think
the
I'm asking,
conversation
well, okay, I think
moving forward with, if we're gonna have a motion to put the money in, I gotta know how much money you wanna put in.
No, I
Mr.
think,
Chairman, isn't step one to adopt a resolution
Bingo,
that would
that's
allow
it.
us
Yeah.
to?
and that's the
And
resolution
is-
right there.
Do we have this posted sufficiently that we can take action today to adopt that resolution?
I'm sorry, say that again, Keith?
Is the meeting posted that this is an action
Yes.
item?
Yes.
That we
Yes.
could
Yeah.
do it? I would
Yeah.
make a motion that we adopt the resolution that would allow us to enter into the local government investment pool.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a second to adopt this into a resolution. I don't have any other, is there any other questions at this time?
Discussion.
Any discussion?
Don't we need to hear what the resolution is?
Well, basically, it's a legal agreement. I mean,
Yeah, don't we need to hear what it says?
we can get out,
We can read it. It's not that long, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, you want me to read
Yeah,
it? Sure,
yeah.
sure, we're happy to. This is the, it's their resolution, they're providing this boilerplate information to us. It's a resolution whereas the state of Wisconsin has created a local government investment pool, and whereas it may prove beneficial for the blank, obviously it's us, to participate in the program. Be it resolved that Lake Ripley Management District, we use our legal title, our legal name, which is not Lake Ripley Management District, it's a little different, but participate in the state of Wisconsin's local government investment pool pursuant to provisions of section 25.50 of the Wisconsin statute. Be it further resolved that the following officers and officials be designated as the local official authorized to transfer funds to or from the local government investment pool. You may, and this is in parentheses, you may have any number of officials. Notification of changes in authorized officials may be made to the Department of Administration in writing without modification to this resolution. Then it lists who's authorized to do it. Be it further resolved that local government investment pool is or is not, please circle, authorized to accept email requests, including facsimile transmissions or withdrawal of funds. This is to certify that the foregoing resolution was adopted, this date, so forth, so on. When I was the treasurer of the Illinois Public Treasurers Investment Pool, we had a restriction that monies that were transferred could only go to the demand account. They could never be transferred anywhere else. I would ask that when we set up this program, if they would allow us to do that, because I don't want the perception that I'm assuming I would have authority to move this money, that I would have the authority to move this money anywhere other than to our demand account here in the Cambridge. So the money would transfer from the pool to our demand account. It can go nowhere else. And once it's in our demand account, we have monthly reporting. We see monthlies being, there's duplicate signatures on the checks.
Right.
I mean, that creates that perception of security for the money. So I would want that. If they say they can't do that, then I'd like to rethink this.
Okay, so that's something we don't.
If they say, no, Mike, we can't do that, you can transfer, since you're an authorized transfer, or you can transfer the money anywhere you want. I know I'm not going to transfer it anywhere else, but in 8 months, I'm going to be, or 10 months, I'll no longer be on the board. So someone else has got to take that responsibility.
Okay. So there's some more legwork to do on
That little question.
on that question.
Yeah, I think once, it's a phone call away to find out if I can do that. If they say, yeah, we can only transfer the money to our demand account, which they may prefer to do that too, you never know.
Right.
I don't want to use it as a checking account. I don't want to start, okay, we're going to pay our rent with one of their checks,
Right.
we're going to pay our payroll with one of their checks, and I don't think they want that either.
So we could adopt the resolution with that included in it.
Yeah, you could amend the resolution.
Yeah.
I could-
Yeah,
whoever-
we could do that.
Mike could amend his resolution, or
Yeah.
we could.
So Keith, what we discussed was, Mike had mentioned that the money could only go to the demand account and out and back. It can't go to like anything else.
Yep.
We would want that to be
I agree.
included in the
Resolution?
resolution, yeah.
I would move to amend the resolution on the board, the table, to include an understanding and requirement that the demand account is the only place that money can go
That's
to from the LGIP.
Yep,
It
okay.
can only land there.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, just point of order. I think that has to be a separate resolution, because this is their form.
Yeah, we
This
would
is
have
their
to.
resolution. So in order for the demand account part, I think that needs to be our own resolution.
Yeah, it's like our
That's
own.
not part of it, that's not,
I think actually, because the motion that you made is to adopt that resolution, I think we can put a condition on that.
He's putting a condition on our motion to adopt that, is what I
oh, so it
understand.
won't be part of the motion then?
It would be, if it's an amendment, if it's adopted, then it would be attached to your motion, then we vote on your motion.
And if that wasn't able to happen, then the motion goes away and we start over looking at this as an option.
Right, if the vote
Well,
was
it's-
to not.
There's no question, practically, because I'm aware of this, there's no question that we can put the money in one account, that only go in the demand account. That's
I don't know that.
Yes.
We don't know that.
Well, I know that just because of my business in dealing with school districts and municipalities is my career. So practically speaking, we can direct where the money will go.
Okay.
It's not that we don't necessarily want to have this board say that that's what we want to do, so that we know and that we notify them.
I think what'll happen, Keith, is that we'll file the resolution and then they'll send us all the applications and
Right.
so forth. And on that application,
It
we
will
can
tell
say
you exactly.
the money
That's
can only
my
go to
point.
our demand account.
Oh, so you're
This
saying
is just setting it up.
okay.
And then the mechanics come after that, in
After
terms
that,
of
yeah.
where the money can go.
Okay, so it's not needed to go to that next step at this point, is what you're
No,
saying.
but
can
we
just
should have a
adopt
board
this.
consensus, because you're gonna get the application and fill it out,
Mm-hmm.
that we've given you direction
Right.
that we only want it to go to the demand account. But that's the mechanics, once we decide we're going to be a member.
Right.
And-
If we change that resolution, they're gonna balk.
Yes.
Because
that's-
then it's gotta go through their legal department to accept any changes to their
That's correct.
resolution. That's why it's pro forma resolution.
Right.
Since there hasn't been a second, I'll withdraw my.
Okay,
amendment.
fine. Well, we're back to the original motion that Keith made to utilize this LGIP account.
Right.
And
It's
then,
local government
just a
investment.
point of order in this, have we decided who the officers are gonna be? Are they the same officers as we have now?
Well, that's a good
The
point.
treasurer and the chair and the administrator?
No, right now,
Director?
Jimmy and I are the authorized check signers. Jimmy and I can move monies from our demand account to for any purpose. Requested certified check, for example, because we're authorized signers. But that's it. I mean, does the board want to expand that to someone else? That's something that'll have to be addressed definitely when I leave the board.
Currently, it's our positions to do that.
Right, and
Correct.
wouldn't it be, just, and again, I don't mean to dominate the conversation, but wouldn't it, since we're only getting this money from the LGIP to the demand account, which means it's never leaving and going out to a vendor.
That's our
only getting
intention.
to our account, wouldn't it make sense to also authorize, our district manager to be able to make that move to the account?
I have no.
Because as a full-time
we could have any board
employee,
member, yeah.
it would just seem to make practical sense that it would be the treasurer, the chair, and the,
It's the treasurer or the chair or the manager.
or.
Yeah.
Because when you were at your district, I'm guessing that you were not on the board, but you were still authorized to move money.
I was the treasurer of the board,
Yeah,
the high school board.
okay.
Yeah. So
All right, so you were not an employee.
no, I was an officer.
So the district administrator, or the district finance director at your school district, was he authorized or she authorized?
She was not authorized to move money. I was the only one authorized to move money.
All right.
Now, obviously, in case of my death or disability, then
Right.
they had to jump through a lot of hoops to get that changed.
And I think for now, we could keep it the way it is,
Okay.
with the idea of always being able to expand. I don't think anybody's opposing that. I don't think so.
Just
Okay.
so that with that clarification, that's the two officers, that the treasurer and the
That's
board
our
chair.
current policy.
Yeah.
Okay.
That'd be the names we put in here.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions on the
Additional
motion?
discussion. I just want the board to fully understand that we are moving money out of the local area. We are moving money and, outside of Cambridge. principal dollars. So when we go to the bank and if we move 75 or 80 or 90 or 100 or whatever the number is, you know, they're not going to enjoy the benefit of that money.
But has them come up with more money then.
Well, that's a very good point. And before, you know, or in addition to adopting this resolution and starting the process, which no doubt will take a while, I could approach the board, or excuse me, the bank, and say, listen, here's what we're going to do. We're moving 100 grand or whatever the number is. Can you match these rates on a monthly basis and give us bonus interest like you did, you know, 15 years ago? I could do that.
And when the bank changes hands, then they get a new owner.
It's the
and
same thing.
Right.
You know, and it may happen because they, you know, they pay interest. I'm sure that they have arrangements with maybe the town, maybe the village of Cambridge, maybe the town of Oakland. I don't know. Maybe you do, Jimmy. That they would pay interest over and above the stated interest on the demand account. You know, leaving money in your demand account. You know, I mean, when you look at your personal finances, your demand account should always be relatively low. It should be no more than, you know, pick a number, 30 days expenses or whatever the number is. Anything else should be at a higher interest rate somewhere else.
Is $100,000 enough to generate that interest? Is that a lot of money?
I think if to move it out of the bank to generate the interest from the bank.
Yeah.
I think the bank, if we tell them we're going to move 100 grand out of the bank, they would be quite concerned.
Okay.
Remember, we bought a piece of property for over 40 grand, and we didn't use any of our own money.
Okay, so now we're getting into the conversation of do we want to leverage the bank to meet these interest rates?
And that's a discussion.
That's the treasurer's responsibility. I would suggest, Mr. Chair.
Georgia. Yeah.
It seems like it would be friendly to approach the bank and say, we are considering this, and is there any way that you can make it good for us to keep our money in the community?
Yeah, absolutely. It's all in the presentation. So I would walk softly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be better.
We're also talking about competing responsibilities. The responsibility of, you know, reducing the cost, the money, but then also the responsibility to the community. Which one
getting
is
more money for their money, right?
which one? Well, which one is? Are we really more elected to do?
We don't really have a fiduciary responsibility as an investment advisor, but we do have fiduciary responsibility as a board to maximize our earnings.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I think that competing responsibility, that one competes a little better.
And I think someone made an earlier comment about it reduces the levy, our required levy.
Sure.
In the past, we haven't used our earnings on interest to reduce our levy because it was only a matter of $400 or $500. But if in fact it turns out to be, you know, a couple $1,000s, maybe we'll use that, or you know, to reduce our levy, our tax levy.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor in a second, and we've, I hope, completed discussion. So do we want to move forward with the vote, or do we want to have more discussion on?
I have no more discussion.
Okay.
I do have one question. So does this motion allow the treasurer to talk to the bank, and then if the bank says, yeah, we'll match that, to not go ahead with this once we've made the motion?
We have a motion on the floor to adopt that resolution right there. Yeah. That's what we currently have.
Yeah, I just wouldn't fund it. You know, I just wouldn't transfer any money into the pool.
Okay.
We're just going to open an account with the pool.
Yeah.
Whether we fund it or not is another story. I mean, if the bank comes back and says, we'll match the pool, and, you know, the board says, hey, you know, before I move money, I would want to have the discussion with the bank and bring it back to the board.
Okay, as long as it's allowed. That's one thing.
Or
a motion.
We can table the whole thing until we have more information. But we have a motion on the floor right now that we have to act on. So I'll call for the vote.
Yeah.
Okay, so the motion on the floor is that we utilize the resolution for the LGIP moving forward. And we had a second on the motion. Any other discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Nays? Okay, we'll move forward with that. Okay, moving on. Discussion and possible action of the 2018-19 trapping season. We have one permit, I believe.
Yep, we have a permit from Travis Olson. He's been our trapper for the last several years, and then I think on and off since then. I guess we take applications and then we pick one by lottery. We've only had one application this year, so that takes care of that. But as far as I understand, the board then approves that application.
As long as he met the deadline of the application?
He met the deadline of the application and has always filled out the report of the previous trapping season. So
and paid the fee already?
Paid the fee.
Okay. Question?
Well, he hasn't paid the fee. We have to
No, that's
approve
what
it
it is.
first.
There's a fee of $50.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. And
I've got a question. What does he trap?
so we allow for trapping of
Muskrats?
Muskrats is what mostly gets trapped, then raccoon and mink.
Okay, we talked about it in the beginning of the year about all the tree stands that you had seen. Did you dismantle all of those? Is that still an issue?
That's still an issue. Yeah.
Okay, how are we going to resolve that?
Well, that's a separate issue than trapping.
I understand that. Okay, I'll bring that up later.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, so will the board approve? Okay, so I'll need a motion to approve the trapping license for the 2018-2019 season. We've only received one license. I'll need a motion.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I'll make that motion.
Mike, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second to approve the trapping license that was submitted to us for the 18-19 trapping season. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Nays? Okay, thank you. Discussion and possible action of the formation of a committee to create compensation policy for the lake manager's position. We currently don't have a committee or even really a process on our posting procedure on how we hire and or compensate our lake manager's position. The posting is pretty wide range. We had a lot of discussion during the annual meeting on how we decided to compensate the lake manager's position. And the idea, and several of us, and I think Keith actually brought this idea up, was we should probably form a committee and some more policies or some more processes on how we actually determine the annual raise moving forward. So I guess we'll just form I mean, the agenda item is asking to form us a committee. Is there anybody interested in serving on that committee?
I want to.
Okay.
I'd be happy to do it.
Okay. So
Why, just a question, why wouldn't we have the board go into a private meeting where everybody's all together? Shouldn't that be by all the board members in a private meeting?
and we did.
Just a thought.
Yeah, and we did. So that's how that position got approved, and that's exactly what happened. We had a committee that worked on the hiring process, and we were in closed session, and then we came back, and the board authorized me to hire Andrew for a certain amount. Did.
Let me remind the board on how we make salary adjustments now. There is a budget committee. I think you're on it, I'm on it, and Andrew's on it, and anyone else who wants to join the process during the day. They don't have voting power, but they can sit in on the meeting. During that process, we decide, when we get to that line item for village manager, for lake managers, we take into consideration two things. We take into consideration cost of living, and we historically use the cost of living for the Gary, Chicago, Milwaukee, with an adjustment for the Madison area. That's what we've used that statistic for years now. And then we take a look at it, and this is the subjective part of it, what would be a merit increase. And I think it was Keith that brought it up at the annual meeting, the budget meeting, or maybe it was the annual meeting, whatever, that we bring into, we have a set salary, but then we bring in there the possibility of an incentive item, the bonus, I think you called it. And of course that bonus would have to be voted on at the annual meeting when the budget is approved. So up to this time, we haven't taken into consideration any bonus. We just called it merit based upon what happened. Once the committee, the three of us, decide what that number is, and the lake manager always sort of excused himself on that discussion. He sort of kept a low profile. It comes to the full board, and the full board discusses it. If you recall, usually the month before the annual meeting, we distribute to the board our work papers, and we go line item by line item, and then there's discussion on the compensation package and how we arrived at it, and then it goes to the residents to
Same
vote
kind
on.
of thing we do on the town board.
Okay,
We
same
do a
thing.
very similar thing on the town board with the town employees.
So we don't really we're doing what we call a merit increase, and Keith, I'll give you credit for this. You want to compensate our staff, incentivize them to do more. I don't disagree with that concept. It would be it'd be very subjective, not too unlike our merit increase now. So what we would do now is we would have the committee meet, we would approve a cost of living increase, and then whoever's on the committee, Mike and Keith both said they'd participate, would then come up with a recommended bonus based on the achievements of the lake manager over the preceding 12 months. So that's the way we would do it in the future. Is that the way you understand it?
Not exactly.
Okay.
My thought was, and it's just a thought, whether we call it merit or bonus isn't the issue. I think the issue is having a set of criteria, having the manager agree to it, that this is what we're going to accomplish this year. And if we do accomplish it, that will be taken into consideration for merit increase. These will be the factors. I don't want it to be a subjective, I guess, and that at the end of the year, or before we make the budget, the manager would come back with his own report as to here's how I did this year.
Okay.
So we'd be setting up an evaluation process.
That's more thorough than the current one. It's really
That's a little bit more thorough,
Right.
and that would be used. And this is all conversation right now, because I wasn't envisioning that I would come back and say that Andrew should get a $5,000 merit increase. I wasn't envisioning that Mike and I would come up with that recommendation. I was envisioning that we're going to set up a system that whether it's Andrew or not here, that this is how we're going to compensate. This is going to be, and it would also look at our benefits packages. It would look at how do we determine how much sick leave, how much carryover. Though it was more of just setting up, a system.
Would in your mind, Keith, would the adjustment that you would recommend, would that be a one-time, for lack of a better term, I'll call it bonus, based on the preceding 12 months? And then it would revert down to, it was referred to as like zero budgeting. I mean, you start at zero and work your way up.
That component.
So the next year, that 5,000, using your example, would not be there.
You'd start over on that problem.
You know,
You'd have your cost of living, and then you'd have your. Right. And if there was no performance, you wouldn't necessarily even give the cost of living. I mean, then we have performance issues.
Right, and then it's a whole different area.
Right.
Well, the discussion now is kind of getting into the details of what you may or may not propose to the committee might have proposed to the board. Right. I think we're getting too far into the weeds right now.
Right.
Yeah, I
do
agree.
we want to have that subcommittee to actually do
back.
that
I was
work?
just going to do that.
Exactly.
So here's what I would like to do.
That's
As
exactly
the
right.
agenda item says, we want to start a committee
To the budget committee, so we can reflect it in the budget that is presented at the annual meeting or a month before. So I mean, there's timing issues there too.
I guess the other part to that is every year we always fill out a form.
That could be part of the process, and we'll
That'd be
provide
part-
that form, the evaluation form that we currently have to the committee, and they can
Okay.
either revise
Use
it
that
or
as a resource.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, any other discussion?
I've got a question. What is the norm? What is the COLA? What is the normal raise for a person?
Well, for state and public employees, you have the cost of living.
Right.
And
What
then
is that? How
Well,
much
it was,
percent?
Right now, it's
3%?
2.5 to
2.5%.
3%.
Okay, I saw on the news this morning that 62% of the people in the state make less than $20 an hour. I don't know, is $20 a living wage?
Well, the federal minimum wage is 7.25, I think. So the federal government thinks 7.25 is a living wage.
And
I
again,
can't disagree
and again,
with
the
that.
committee can make the recommendation on what they think to bring back, and that's the best way to do it. Any other discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Nays? Okay, we'll form the committee and I'll appoint the two who volunteered, and then I would probably be be on that committee also. Okay, moving on to the discussion and possible action of recognition of the donors who contributed to the purchase of the former DNR land property. We have talked since we actually got all the donations. We have talked quite often and in several meetings about having some kind of recognition event, a dinner or luncheon or something for the folks who donated money to the purchase of the DNR land. We have a list of the people. There's 8 or 10 of them or more, and I guess it's on the agenda. We have it right here. Okay, so yeah, there's several. I think the idea is to actually have a recognition dinner or something for them, right? Is that kind of what we were thinking?
There's also talk about signage at the preserve, and then I know I talked to Joel Wynn, I talked to Mike about that, and then also there was a matter of publishing it or promoting it in the newspaper, or,
Sure,
you know,
all that.
so there's different ways that we could do it.
Okay. We received about $29,000 in donations,
Yeah, the only thing that's not on there is the Ducks Unlimited,
which is another
15,000.
15,000. So, I guess, do we have an account that we could take money out to do this type of recognition? We don't
Not
have
really.
anything.
No, it would come out of the preserve budget.
I don't think we should do much.
You don't think we should do much? Okay. Well, that's why we're discussing it. What do you think?
I don't think we should be spending money that way.
I do have one comment on the sign. So currently in our kiosk, we have like it's basically like a highway sign, you know, aluminum sign that's been printed on there. And it has, it talks about a little bit about the preserve, and it's outdated because I think it says it's 170 or 67 acres or whatever it is. And then it also has, I can't remember if it's a list of the donors, but it also has like their emblems and stuff. So like Ducks Unlimited, Pheasants Forever, and the local conservation club. Those are all donors for original purchases on the preserve, and then also actually on this latest one as well, Cambridge Foundation, another big one. So I would propose that at the least we would basically update that sign with any new donors that are on there to reflect the current condition of the preserve as far as the acreage and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So I think that's definitely worth spending money on just to make it current.
So that could be the recognition piece of this?
That could be one component of it, yeah. And then I think that sign should be put outside of the kiosk so we have more room for stuff.
Good ideas. Keith.
Mr. Chair, couldn't we just do a nice write-up in the Ripples thanking them?
Sure we could.
And then listing it that way? I mean, just because everybody in the district gets that.
Sure.
And the people outside of the district probably don't care, but just a nice thank you for the donors and just
That's
kind of
good
Matter of
acknowledgement.
fact,
acknowledge it.
I think we've done that a couple of times already, haven't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so before I came on.
But not for these donors, right?
I think we have. Mike.
Oh.
No, I don't think we have.
Okay.
I don't think we should have a dinner or a luncheon or anything like that. I think in the past, when we purchased the original purchase of the preserve, there was just a little presentation out in the parking lot area. And let's be honest, there weren't a lot of people there. But we did have the sign, and we did have some acknowledgement of the people. So I think we ought to. I don't think we ought to go through a formal dinner or luncheon or anything like that. But I do think we ought to definitely recognize these people and these organizations somehow, multiple times, because we're going to go back to them in the future. It's going to happen. We're going to find that piece of property that we want. And
Are here right now. Thank you.
Actually, there are two of them right here.
They're
right here now.
Have we thanked them personally? Have we sent a note to each one? So that's
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, I believe so.
yeah,
I think we've done quite a bit
all
already.
right. Because I mean, at the minimum, each of those donors should get a thank you from.
Yeah.
you know, an individual thing.
Every time we get a donation, Keith,
We give it a
a note is generated from the office. I know Lisa did, I'm assuming that Andrew
Okay.
continues it. And just a recognition, thank you very much, because we do get donations that are unrestricted, just a check in recognition, an honorarium of someone, you know, that kind of thing.
So since we've already given them letters, and since we've already acknowledged them probably in the publications,
I can double check.
or at least on the
I
website?
know for our donation, it was in the Ripples already,
Oh, is it?
because I
Okay.
kept it.
Okay.
Ah.
So we
Wow,
recognized
way to go.
them in the
Maybe we're
Ripples
done.
communication, we recognized them individually with letters. What else are we asking to do?
I kind of follow what Mike said. I would kind of like an opportunity to talk to these people directly and meet them. I don't know all these people. I'm not really from this area as much as others, so that's what I would like to just look them in the eye and say thanks, and you know, see how things are going.
Well, I can
I don't know how you do that, or, you know.
I can pass around. This is where all the. This is an older thing with the what the costs involved with the purchase of the property, and then it has a list of the donors on there, excluding Ducks Unlimited, because it's from last November, I think. So if you want to know who's on the list, it's mostly
I might not go door to
organizations.
door.
With the exception of just a few, it's mostly organizations.
Oh. All right.
So,
And if you updated the sign, could you have like a sign dedication that would cover?
That could be the little event that Walt is suggesting,
I think
the face-to-face.
from everything I'm hearing from the board right now, it sounds like if we update the sign to reflect the donors, like you just spoke about, and then we had that as a dedication and invited them to come, would that satisfy everyone?
That'd be perfect.
I think that'd be great.
Yeah.
And it could be up at the parking lot area rather than down by the acreage, the recent 40 acres of street. There's no parking there, you know. So
Right.
So why don't we do this? Why don't you get us a price on the cost of the sign, and then we'll approve the cost and we'll set the date.
That could just come out of the preserve budget as well.
Okay.
Maybe if,
Okay. Then all we have to do is set a date. Then once the sign's done,
okay.
I don't even know if we need a motion.
No.
I think we're good.
I would also ask about making sure there's room for future donors on that sign if you're going to do a change to the sign. Because
Yeah.
Koshkanon ran the same thing. You get more people, and it's like, okay, now what?
Mm.
More costs. So
little addendum.
Okay.
that's
Well, the intent would be then to get the sign, and we'll have the sign installed, and we'll set a date for a dedication, I guess, and we'll have everybody come. We'll invite them.
your name could go here.
Yeah, it sounds like this is going to be a spring item.
That should be.
April or May.
Yeah, it makes more sense.
Yeah, let's
Open
not
the
do it
season
in
with it.
January.
Okay. We'll move forward with that. Any other discussion on that issue? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
For a second.
I'll second.
All right, Keith second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Go Brewers. Thank you.
Brewers.
Great
Yeah,
meeting,
that was
great
fun.
meeting, you guys.
I
Thank you.
missed those last two innings.
Andrew
they
wants
scored.
it goes to Andrew.
It was
You
so
wanna
great
fill
that
out,
they didn't
Andrew,
need
Okay.
hate or whatever.
You going to the game?
Watching on my phone.
And let's see, how are we going to transfer? Just get it back to me some way.
Okay.
I
I'll
scribbled on
probably
mine
need the
then, no.
original copy.
All right. I can do
And
that.
then